Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. The coming days after Izuku and Yamato were allowed into the Whitebeard pirate crew was amazing for the two of them. Izuku, although he had to do some chores as well as other things for keeping the ship clean as well as sanitary, had a lot of fun with. The others, he had felt like he was a part of a family, something he hadn't had in over 12 years of his life ever since coming to this world as a 4-year-old. He was told by Whitebeard that they were going to Alabasta in order to meet one of his division commanders within his crew, and Izuku was excited to meet this guy. From what he overheard from Whitebeard himself was that this guy had come over to his ship and declared that he would kill him, only to join him instead because Pops liked his style as well as spunk. Izuku had no idea what Pops liked about some kid who ran up to him and declared he was going to kill him, but the simple fact that he entertained the idea of the kid being capable of killing him was kind of off-putting. The ship was heading in the direction of where Alabasta was located as Izuku hung over the edge of the ship, collecting barnacles from the side of it. From what he heard from Whitebeard was that they were very dangerous to have on a ship since they ate the hull and would cause the ship to take on water if none were taken off enough that it wouldn't pose a problem in the future. As he was going about his mission of clearing the sides of the ship of the barnacles, he never noticed how one of the Whitebeard pirates were watching him from afar with a look on his eyes that spoke of trouble. The man was moving closer to Izuku as the young man had finally cleared the spot of barnacles from the side of the ship and was pulling himself up from the side of the ship. Once he got to the rails of the ship, he was surprised by the appearance of a pudgy-looking man with a black stubble and black hair flowing from the back of his head. Looking at him, the surprise was so fast and unexpected that Izuku yelped in fear as he fell off the ship before being caught by the man. "Sorry for scaring you, little guy. Just inspecting the newbie," the man said, gruffly as he smirked at Izuku. The young man noticed how this guy was missing a few teeth in his mouth as he looked at Izuku with his sinister smile. "Thanks for the save, but what are you doing up here?" Izuku asked as he was pulled up. "Just exploring the ship before I get back to work. Have fun cleaning the hull, newbie," the guy said as Izuku gained a curious expression on his face. Looking at the retreating man's back, he found that there was the tattoo of his Jolly Roger within the Whitebeard pirates. It held a skull with a black beard on it, as it had a sinister smile on its face as well as the crossbones behind it. Izuku was intrigued with the Jolly Roger on the guy's back as he shook his head as he got back to work. He couldn't allow himself to be completely distracted with this new guy he met since he had to get this done before they arrived in Alabasta. The Whitebeard pirate ship had arrived in Alabasta as Whitebeard had docked himself so that he could gather supplies from the place in order to restock. He wouldn't go out on another voyage without collecting the supplies needed in order to keep his crew going on the sea. Smirking to himself, he decided to go see an old friend there and make sure that he was pointed in the direction of Izuku and Yamato as the two were exploring the island with smiles on their faces. Within the next few minutes, Whitebeard had entered a bar where he found the person who he wanted to speak to. "Ace, my son, how are you doing here in Alabasta?" Whitebeard asked as the young man looked over at him. "Doing fine, Pops. What's up?" Ace asked. He was a shorter man compared to Whitebeard, but had black hair that was more like a bowl cut, but slightly longer than one. He also wore a brown rain cap that hung above his black hair as he smiled at his captain that he treated more like a father than anything. Another thing that was curious about him was the fact that he had red beads hanging like a necklace around his neck and was shirtless. "I need you to go meet your newest little sister and brother. They are exploring the island to the south, near Crocodile's territory," Whitebeard said as Ace stood up. "Well, thanks for the information, Pops. I will head out now in order to meet them." "What do they look like?" Ace asked, stretching his tired limbs. "They have white hair for the woman and black hair with green highlights. The most intriguing part about them, one has horns of an oni and the other has freckles on their face. Whitebeard said as he watched as Ace gained a curious look. How strong are these two? Strong enough to dupe Kaido about stealing his keys and freeing them from his stronghold on Wano. Whitebeard replied as Ace gained a happy expression on his face. They duped out Kaido of all people? I gotta see them now. It's been a long time since someone had been capable of duping that monster, Ace said, gaining energy and running out of the bar as Whitebeard drank some of his rum that he bought and flirted with the waitress. As the woman blushed at him and walked to get his drink, Whitebeard could only say one thing as he chuckled. Looks like I still got it. Ace moved about the area around the town as he searched for the two that had the description that Pops had given him. He was so excited about meeting them that he nearly missed his little brother Luffy running up to him with his very own pirate crew. Hey Luffy, how are you doing? Ace asked as Luffy smiled at him. I'm doing fine, been having a blast on the sea. I can't wait to meet more powerful foes, Luffy said, smiling. I can't wait to see you try and attain the title of King of the Pirates. Could you point me in the direction of two people I'm looking for? Ace asked as a girl with orange hair walked up. What do they look like? She asked as Ace stared at her for a second. One has black hair and green highlights. The other has white hair and red horns. One is shorter than the other, Ace said as the girl nodded her head and pointed in the direction the two had gone. Thanks for telling me. I can't wait to meet my new brother and sister, he said, laughing as he ran off in the direction of Crocodile's home. That's your brother, Luffy? The girl asked as the young man nodded. I can't wait to challenge him for the title of King of the Pirates. He is my big brother, and I can't wait to show him who's going to be king, Luffy said with a smile. Izuku and Yamato were moving about the desert as they rationed their water reserves. As they moved about the sandy desert, how much further until we enter Crocodile's territory? Izuku asked as Yamato looked at her map. Almost there. Can't believe that we'll be capable of seeing what his place is like from what I hear. He rules with an iron fist, Yamato gushed as Izuku chuckled as they moved closer to the town in the distance. When Whitebeard had informed them to explore the island, they were immediately off in order to see what the island had in store for them by exploring every nook and cranny of the place. They were just outside the barrier blocking them from getting inside the town when they found a young man moving towards them at a high speed. Who's that, Izuku? Yamato asked as Izuku looked at the incoming missile called a human. It wasn't much longer before the man had arrived in front of them, standing before them with a smile on his face as he stared at them. There you both are. I've been looking all over this island for you. Do you know how hard it was to find a boy and girl with white hair and red horns, as well as a boy with black hair with green highlights? The man said as he pulled them both in for a hug. Izuku, who was completely confused at this, activated his haki and slammed his fist into the young man's head. As soon as the man slapped into the ground, he got back up immediately with a bump on his head as he whined about his little brother hurting him. Big brother? What are you talking about? Izuku asked as Yamato had a confused look as well. Oh, forgot to introduce myself. My name is Portgas D. Ace, and I am a part of Pop's crew. I man my own ship that I named the Spade Pirates, he said, smiling. Izuku shook his hand as he told him about what he and Yamato had been through ever since leaving Wano. To say the young man was surprised by their bravery as well as ingenuity was nothing compared to how they told him their plan of distracting Kaido with a fight and stealing his keys for their sea stone cuffs from his pocket as he fought Yamato. Wow, you both really duped that monster. But now that we know about his plan to amass an army to take down the other three Yonko, we know what he will be planning. Just keep out of the fight. We don't want you both to get hurt. Kaido is an extremely powerful man who cannot be taken lightly, Ace said as both nodded. We know that from experience since we had him train us since we were 4. Izuku said as Ace nodded. With that said, they entered the town as they looked about the place as they saw the look of the people within the place. Isn't this supposed to be safe for the people inside here? What's going on? Izuku asked, concerned for the populace of the town. Crocodile owns this town. It's where he operates. His devil fruit is a logia that controls sand, and he can swallow out the water from your body and dehydrate you. Within seconds, Ace informed as Izuku. Thought about this opponent. I won't be able to get close to him without suffering from dehydration. I guess I can. Leave him alone for now, Izuku said as he thought hard about his next moves. But as it seemed like nothing bad was going to happen, they all heard a fight breaking out nearby in the desert behind the town as they ran to see what happened. That was when Ace sighed angrily as they all saw a rubber man start beating the hell out of the warlord of the sea. Is this supposed to be happening? Izuku asked as Ace sighed. That would be my little brother's handiwork. He really hates how people are treated by others and will strive to make sure that they were saved at all costs, Ace said, as Izuku found himself agreeing with the man's little brother's ideology. They watched as the fight continued on as Crocodile managed to make the rubber man lose all the water in his body as the fight moved into Crocodile's favor. But overall, the fight didn't last much longer since the rubber man had used his surroundings to defeat the monster before he could steal any water from his body again. Izuku and Yamato were staring on in shock, as well as awe, as the rubber man had managed to defeat a warlord who had over 800 million berries worth of a bounty. As soon as the rubber man noticed their presence nearby, he ran over and greeted Ace as the taller man slammed his fist into the rubber man's head, calling him out for his recklessness. I thought I told you to not interfere with this place, he screamed as the rubber man was slammed into the ground. As soon as the rubber man had come up from the ground, he started to laugh hysterically as unknown to their group A Marine had come by and collected the warlord and left the place without being noticed. Well, thanks for helping the people, Luffy, but I need to keep an eye on someone within the crew I'm a part of, Ace said, getting ready to head off. Who are you supposed to be after? Izuku asked as Ace looked back at him. I'm going after a man named Marshall D. Teach, otherwise known as Blackbeard. He betrayed Pops, and I have to bring him in for punishment, Ace said, leaving as Izuku and Yamato had looked over at the small crew within the straw hats. Nice to meet you. I'm Izuku Midoriya, secret member of the Whitebeard Pirates. This is Yamato. She is with me on the same crew, Izuku said as he shook the hand of Luffy. Well, if you ever need help, be sure to send an invite. I love to fight a strong opponent, Luffy called out as he walked away, as his crew followed not far behind him. Izuku couldn't help but blurt out a question to Yamato. I wonder how he got that X-shaped scar on his chest. Before they both headed back to Whitebeard's ship, Izuku and Yamato were in the middle of their spar on an island nearby the Whitebeard flagship. They had been increasing their experience in using their haki as well as devil fruit for Yamato. They had been increasing the aggression of their training since they heard about the betrayal of Marshall D. Teach, otherwise known as Blackbeard. He had renamed his pirate crew to be Zebek Saber as he had caused Ace to chase after him and placed a trap for the young division commander. Now the Whitebeard pirates were making their way over to Marine Ford in order to get him back from the Marines so that they could keep him safe. It was during this time that Luffy had arrived, stating that he wanted to save his brother from the Marines and that he wished to get a ride from Whitebeard to do so. Whitebeard had told Luffy in their meeting that it could get both of them killed going to Marine Ford, and the young captain told the old man about his dream of becoming king of the pirates. It was enough to allow the young captain of the Straw Hats to join their crews through the Grand Line and straight to Marine Ford. Izuku and Yamato had clashed their new blades against one another as red and black lightning had flown about the air as well as their blades not touching. The shockwaves from each attack was massive for the abandoned island as the two were acting as if they were one of the Yonko themselves. Whitebeard had sensed their power from the day he first met them and knew that they would be great successors to his title of the strongest man. He even gave Izuku the devil fruit that he had eaten from the Gura no Mi. Izuku was surprised that the man never ate the entire fruit, as he merely stated that he didn't wish for it to be taken by Teach and hidden it from him. Izuku kept it on his person for the moment that Whitebeard had died, and Izuku had told Whitebeard that the moment he dies, he would eat the fruit right then and there. It made Whitebeard proud that his new son, who is 3 months old, and his crew had been so loyal to him. He even managed to get the tattoo of his crew on his back to be displayed. My sons, my daughters, we are going to war against the world government. They had taken one of my children, and I will make it my mission to bring him back. We will storm Marineford and take Port Gasti. Ace back and get him his safety, Whitebeard announced to his crew as everyone nodded. Are you sure that you can handle fighting their pops? Izuku asked, concerned for the man's health. I know that I told you and Yamato that I'd help you in the fight against Kaido, but I am simply too old to assist in a fight against that creature. I will have my crew help in any way they can, and only then can you be safe, Whitebeard said, smirking. As the boat was sailing towards Marineford, the crew noticed how the Marines were very aware of Whitebeard's vengeance against them, as they had a whole fleet of men ready for the Moby Dick to arrive. Once they arrived, Whitebeard had walked up to his deck in order to make his welcome realized to the Marines as they awaited his arrival. Izuku and Yamato were at the back of the crew as Izuku held the remaining Gura Gura Nomi in his bag, waiting to eat it when Pops would eventually die. He knew that the man could outlast any fight, even in his current condition, but even that was a stretch for how old the man had been since he was nearing his last day. Whitebeard had leaned back as he bent forward as he charged his attack, as he slammed his fists into the world on his left and right sides, causing cracks to appear in the air, causing the ocean on both sides of the ship to cause tsunamis the size of Marineford itself to come flying towards the place. But just as it was about to hit the place, an admiral of the Marines had jumped from their position and froze everything together. He then sent attacks towards Whitebeard as Izuku jumped in the way, and with his hockey-infused attacks, he sent them flying back at the admiral. Izuku would land back down on the ship next to Whitebeard as the man patted Izuku's head as he jumped down to the frozen ground below. Izuku and the other pirates had jumped from the ship as they followed their pops. Izuku had stayed on the ship since a giant was coming for them, and he countered the axe weapon with a hockey-infused punch to the blade itself, and then used Conqueror's hockey in order to knock the Marine out. As soon as he jumped to join the others, he found that Pops was fighting with Admiral Akainu as he made his way to find Ace, who was about to be executed by the men. Only for Luffy's version of Conqueror's hockey to knock most of the Marines who couldn't stand it, as well as the guards who were going to kill Ace, to fall to the ground unconscious. Izuku and the others moved forwards in order to get to Ace, but were stopped by another admiral. Izuku noted that this one had eaten a devil fruit that could control all of light and could turn himself into some for his attacks. Izuku had fought this admiral for a time as the other pirates had teamed up on the lower tier Marines, and Izuku in his fight against the admiral was having slight trouble. With his training with Yamato, this fight was almost easy if it weren't for the devil fruit of the man to be so annoying. But he eventually chased the admiral off and away from his allies as they took Ace away from the execution pad. They were on their way out when they noticed how Pops was not moving from his spot on the frozen ground nearby as Akainu started to rage out against the Whitebeard pirates. Izuku clashed fists with the man immediately as Yamato came behind the admiral and swung her kanabo on the man's stomach, sending him back from the others. Working together, they managed to hold him off until Pops had gotten back up and entered the fight once again in order to keep the admiral off of Ace. But the man was slightly too agile to keep him still, but it was too late. The man went to attack Luffy as he was about to pick up a Weaver card that kept him close to Ace, and just as the man was about to kill Luffy, Ace blocked the attack. The fist, though, went through Ace's back and through his chest as his entire body flared up in flames with his eyes blocked out for the moment. Akainu had pulled his arm out of the boy's chest as everyone looked on in shock. Ace was killed in front of everyone, most definitely Luffy. Izuku kicked Akainu in the back of the head, sending him to Pops as the admiral got back up to recognize Izuku. What are you doing here, brat? He asked curiously. I'm here to protect my brother. Any brother of Ace is a brother of mine, and you will not get to Luffy, Izuku said, putting up his fists and activating his haki on his body as well as activating Conqueror's haki. Akainu smirked at the boy as he slowly moved towards him as he started to laugh. At the display, "You're like a kitten to me, in terms of power. You can't hold a candle to the power I can." Display, Akainu said as he prepared another attack. Izuku infusing his attack with Conqueror's haki as well as armament haki had pulled his fist back as soon as both attacks landed. On the other, their fists created a shockwave as Izuku held the man back as hard as he could as he looked surprised by the strength of the boy. "Color me surprised, young man. You could have been a great marine. Sucks that you became a pirate instead." The admiral monologued as he placed some more pressure into the attack. Izuku's feet started to skid back on the ice and breaking through some of it as he bought time for Luffy to escape. He turned to look at Luffy one more time to see a fisherman come by and take him away in order to keep him alive. Izuku smiled as he saw the man's look of pure fury as Izuku glared at him hard, releasing his Conqueror's haki completely against him. "You won the battle, but you lost the war," Izuku said, pulling his fist away and dodging. The strike Pops was preparing on the man. As soon as Akainu had overextended his strike, he was surprised by the motion, but from his left he found a devil fruit enhanced punch coming his way as it landed on his face, sending him to the ground. "Get out of here, I will hold them off," Whitebeard called out. "What about you?" Izuku called back as Yamato picked him up. "I will fight the Marines here, besides there's someone else I need to talk to," Whitebeard said, as his crew started to retreat with Ace's body in tow. Whitebeard had gone to punch Akainu again, as the man fearfully went for a sloppy punch into the pirate captain's stomach as it bulged slightly before going to normal, creating a flaming hole in the man. Izuku was screaming at this point as the only man to treat him as a son was seemingly dying in front of him, but it didn't happen. Immediately as he grabbed Akainu and tossed him in the air as soon as he stood back up, pulling his fist back, he activated his devil fruit as he started to send the punch for Akainu's midsection of his body. As soon as the fist hit the kidney area of Akainu, cracks formed around the man as his body seemingly moved with the cracks. Although the cracks that came from the attack on Akainu had caused mayhem around Marine Ford as the damage extended to the building behind the man. As soon as Akainu had fallen unconscious at the feet of Whitebeard, a new face showed up. "Teach," Whitebeard said, glaring at the son that used to be his own. "Pops, it's been a while." Black Hole, Blackbeard said, as he dispelled some of the damage that was dealt by Whitebeard. He then went on the attack of Whitebeard as they traded quick but decisive blows on one another. But with Whitebeard's age, he couldn't do the amount of damage to put Blackbeard down for good as his ability with a devil fruit were countered immediately. It wasn't much longer before Whitebeard landed a slash from his Nodachi on Blackbeard's body and sent it to the ground, before placing his weapon's bulbed end as well as one of his hands on the man's hands, before placing his foot on the other hand, releasing his weapon, activating his devil fruit on the hand that was holding Blackbeard's face. The said pirate was struggling with his head in order to break the iron grip the old man had as he blasted the ground with his power. The resulting explosion of dust caused Blackbeard to look fearfully at Whitebeard as the man menacingly walked over to him, as his body started to release steam from the previous attack as well as his body glow slightly with red skin. An extreme close-up of the man showed that he had whited out eyes as he glared angrily at Blackbeard as he closed in on the downed Blackbeard. "Why, you monster!" Blackbeard called out, scuttling away from the man as he prepared a Gura punch, and as he sent it towards Blackbeard's face, Blackbeard had pulled out a gun and shot Pops in the chest. Izuku screamed even more as he struggled to get out of Yamato's grasp as she held him back from attacking Blackbeard. The man and his crew had started eviscerating Whitebeard's body as the man reeled from the damage to his chest as he stood still. As soon as the slashing, shooting, punching, and kicking was over, Whitebeard's body stood tall as his jacket fell off, revealing his tattoo on his back of his crew as he held on to his Nodachi. It was here that Izuku pulled out the Gura no Mi and found that the bite that Pops had taken out of it was back, and it was back to full. Izuku watched as Blackbeard was looking for the devil fruit that belonged to Whitebeard that he believed would remain inside of the man. But as soon as he looked over at Izuku's location as if he could find it on the battlefield, he found Izuku opening his mouth and eat the whole fruit whole. He chewed up the fruit as tears flowed out of his eyes as he gained a slight glow around his body as it became empowered with the fruit entirely. Jumping off of Yamato, he looked over at Marco as the man nodded as Izuku lifted his hands into the air and grasped the world. As he pulled on it slightly, he felt the power he needed in order to be used in order to escape from Marineford, and he pulled down as the entirety of the area was filled with ocean water that covered the way for their escape. It was here that one of the admirals of the sea watched as Izuku consumed the Gura no Mi, as they knew that the threat on the boy should now be raised to support his newfound power. It was a few hours since Marineford had been raided by the Whitebeard pirates, and Sengoku, the admiral above Akainu at the moment, had gone to the world government leaders. They all looked at him with confusion as well as concern, as the man was here for business. "What brings you here, Sengoku?" a man with a large body asked. "I've come here with news. Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, is dead, killed by Marshal D. Teach, and the Gura no Mi is now in the hands of a young and upcoming man. His name is Midoriya Izuku, and this is his current bounty," Sengoku said, showing the world government leaders the bounty on Izuku's head. It showed the young man with a sad smile on his face, and the bounty underneath it showed around 300 million berries. "What do you wish for us to do?" the big man asked. "I wish to increase the bounty from 300 million berries to around 2 billion berries. If that young man got even more powerful, especially with his haki, and combined his attacks with his new devil fruit, it could be devastating for the future," Sengoku said as the world leaders nodded their heads. "It will be done. As of now, this Midoriya Izuku's newfound bounty is to be held at 2,300 million berries," the giant of a man said as he smirked at Sengoku. "It has been a couple of days since the sudden death of Whitebeard, as well as the subsequent dismissal of the Whitebeard pirates. Those who were loyal to his crew decided to stick with Marco as they changed their name to the Phoenix Pirates. Izuku and Yamato were the newest to the Whitebeard family, as they had suddenly lost someone who was their whole world as a parent die in front of them, chose to stay with Marco. The man was like an uncle to the two of them, and they wanted nothing more than to train in order to defeat both the beast pirates as well as Akainu and Blackbeard for the death of their newfound father. It has been rough for Marco specifically, since he had been monitoring their growth and had noticed how they were going way too hard on themselves and getting stronger, even training during the night to get something out of their training. He had been forced to have them rest over the last couple of days in order to recover from the fatigue as well as cope with the death of their leader. Marco had simply smiled and told them to remember Pops for who he was and not for how he died. Izuku took this to heart as Yamato followed his lead. It worked, as Izuku managed to try and learn how to use the Gura no Mi like Whitebeard had, and had been instantly capable of utilizing the power just like his predecessor had. Izuku, though, had a brain for making use of something like this and using it for new things, such as using it whilst combining the power with haki in order to take on stronger foes. Izuku found out that when he combined the power of the Gura fruit with haki, its devastation that it held when combined with haki was massive. He chose to only use it for the fight against foes who were massively stronger than Yamato, such as Akainu, Kaido, Big Mom, and some others. They were in the middle of a forest on a remote island just far enough away to be out of the influence of the world government. Marco stood across from Izuku and Yamato as he held a smirk on his face as he happily looked at his two charges. "Well, it seems like your strength has grown many times since Pop's death, but you mustn't allow yourselves to fall into anger. It's what can cause your opponents to have an opening they desire to use against you," Marco said as he landed near the two. "I Know that this training is supposed to make us stronger, but why are we on an island? Izuku asked, as Marco pulled a paper from his pocket. Congratulations, Midoriya, Izuku. You are now one of the most wanted pirates in the world, Marco called out, laughing as he watched Izuku's face turn from curiosity to morbid fear. Why does my bounty say that I'm at 2,300,000,000 berries? Izuku asked as Marco looked at Izuku. Because you have Pop's devil fruit ability, Marco said as Izuku passed out there. As the days moved on, weeks became months as Izuku and Yamato continued to grow stronger with both their devil fruit powers as well as their control on Haki. Izuku was nearing the strength of Whitebeard's prime with the devil fruit, helping him out with the strength he didn't have. Izuku and Yamato could be seen moving across the Grand Line as they fought with some warlords who had gotten in their way. Crocodile had been a joke compared to their experience of fighting stronger opponents. Doflamingo had been a complete tragedy since he couldn't keep up with their speed, and Izuku and Yamato had increased their bounties from the original 2.3 billion berries for Izuku to around 3 billion, and for Yamato herself, she gained a bounty of around 2.5 billion for associating with Izuku himself. They made their way across the island they were both on as they found their training area where they increased their strength. They had heard from Marco that the Straw Hats were making their way over to Wano after hearing what the Beast Pirates had done to the place, and they found that this was their only chance at defeating the man. From what their captain had said to them about the Straw Hats, they had gotten many times stronger since the Marineford incident, and that they would need their assistance against Kaido. As Izuku and Yamato continued their training, they soon learned a new skill Izuku had with the Gura no Mi. He could contact Whitebeard from beyond the dead, but it was a one-off ability. It was during a night after Izuku's training with Marco and Yamato in order to gain complete control over the fruit. He had been sleeping in his bed on Marco's ship when the old man had appeared in his prime form in Izuku's dreamscape. Izuku was walking around the Moby Dick as he looked around the place, noticing that certain people were a lot younger than they used to be. He looked around and found one of the Whitebeard pirates jumping off a boat, and they ran over onto the island since there was another pirate in the area they needed to steal some treasure from. As soon as Whitebeard, who had yellow long hair, appeared and was on the move inside the island, a man appeared who bore Kazuki Odin's look. Izuku watched from where he was at, right next to Whitebeard, as he and Odin had clashed blades, creating sparks of fire across their blades. Whitebeard had managed to easily deflect the attack from the Wano native as he sent the man flying backwards as he watched as a new pirate appeared. This one had a long mustache that extended across his face like someone from his world's movies of Captain Hook. The man had a perpetual smile on his face as he jumped at Whitebeard with the intent to attack the man with all he had, and as soon as Whitebeard had thrown his Nodachi against the saber of the pirates, a massive shockwave had appeared around the area. Black lightning had blasted around the area, as a small spot between both weapons had created a small circle where the weapons should have clashed, but they didn't. Izuku was in awe of the power between Prime Whitebeard as well as this man as they clashed in the air. It was not long after this that the entire field changed to the Moby Dick, as Izuku stood in front of Pops as the man looked much older, at least a few months younger before his death. As he stood in front of Izuku, the man wasn't looking off in the distance, but he was looking directly at Izuku, and Izuku couldn't know what he was thinking before he reached down. Instinctively, Izuku flinched before the large hand patted his head, and Izuku looked up to find a happy smile on the old man's face as he spoke. It's been a few months since my death, my son, but worry not, for I am here. Inside your heart, from now on, my power is yours, and my power belongs to you, especially since you ate the Gura no Mi, a devil fruit that gives you the power to become the strongest man in the world. I have high expectations for you, Midoriya, Izuku, and I have learned that your world is in great danger. Once you find the One Piece, you must return to that world. I am not sure if You can bring anyone with you back to your old world. But know this, my son. When you return back to your realm, the Gura no me will be completely absorbed into your body and become your, as you say, quirk. I can only imagine what kind of things you could do with that power in your world when you return, my son. Just know that even with all this training, even with your bounty of 3 billion berries, you will always be my son, and I will always be proud of you and your progress. Whitebeard said as his body started to fade into the distance as petals of a sakura tree seemingly appeared out of nowhere. What are these petals? I've never seen them before, Whitebeard asked, as his body continued to fade from the feet up. They're sakura petals from a sakura tree in my world. I don't know what they're doing in my dream, though, Izuku said as Whitebeard gained a fond look on his face. If reincarnation is a thing, I would love to reincarnate into your world and create a world where people like you don't have to suffer all because of a lack of quirk or power, Whitebeard said as his entire body faded from existence. Dream ended. Izuku woke up with a start as Yamato and Marco were pushing his body to his left as he coughed up his dinner from the previous night. Are you alright, Izuku? Yamato asked, concerned. What happened? Izuku asked as he looked at their confused and scared faces. You were having a seizure in your sleep. What happened to make you have a seizure? Marco asked, incredibly concerned. I met Whitebeard in my dreams. He talked about my world and how proud he was of me and Yamato for how much we had trained. He also spoke about how my world was in danger and that I need to find the One Piece in order to return to my world, and that once I do, the Gura no me will be absorbed into my body by then, and it would become my quirk, Izuku said as Yamato gained a happy expression. Maybe the One Piece had the uncanny ability to send people to other universes. Maybe that's how you came to ours, Yamato theorized as Izuku shook his head. No, I wasn't just brought to this world because of the One Piece. I was reincarnated here. My best friend, no bully, killed me in my world, and I was brought to this one for some reason, Izuku said as he looked at them. So you need to get to the One Piece in order to get back home. Can you bring anyone with you? Marco asked. Seriously, I don't know. Whitebeard didn't know as well, and he knew that I wanted to bring Yamato with me, Izuku informed as Yamato gained a sad smile. I will make sure that Yamato is brought with me. I don't know what I'd do in my old world without her help and assurance, but I'm not sure where I'd end up with her in my world. Probably where I died, though, Izuku said as the group made a plan. All right, so here's the plan. We go defeat Kaido with the straw hats. Then afterwards we head over to Shanks so we could get the One Piece in order to send you and Yamato to Izuku's home of Earth. Then you all deal with the problems over there. I guess after finding the One Piece, it will be goodbye for everyone, Marco said before ending on a sad note. Don't worry, Marco-san, we will always cherish the memories we've had with the Whitebeard crew, even though we were here for a few months, Izuku said, smiling at the man. Now don't get all sappy with me. If you have time to do that, you have time to train. We'll be heading over to Wano in about 2 days. Prepare yourselves for the biggest fight of your lives on Thursday, Marco said seriously before walking off. Watching the disappearing form of Marco, Izuku looked over at Yamato and thought about all the times he spent with Yamato, all the fun he had with her, the times he trained with her, even the times in the bath they spent with one another. When he really thought about it now, they were kind of a couple if they think about it, and as he asked Yamato to follow himself, they moved away from where Marco was located. As the man himself smiled in giddiness, Izuku took Yamato over to the other side of the island in order to show her a view of the place, and when the giant of a woman arrived, she saw the view as well as Izuku, sitting on the ground looking off into the distance where Wano was located. Hey, Izuku, what did you want to talk to me about? She asked as Izuku looked over at her. There was something different about the way he looked at her this time, and she could tell that there was a new emotion within his new look. How long have we known each other, Yamato? Izuku asked as the girl thought about it. Well, we've known one another since we've both been about 4 years old, and have been friends ever since we first met. We've also trained with one another in order to defeat my father, Yamato said, as Izuku smiled even more, with her slowly gaining an image in her head. Have you ever thought about the person who you would like to stay with after you defeat your father and explore the world? Izuku asked as Yamato smiled back at him and pointed at him. You'd be the perfect person to do that with, Izuku. I've always tried to hit on you whenever we went to the bath together, but you always put my advances off, Yamato said mockingly. Well, are you wanting to pursue that relationship now? Izuku asked as he looked at her in her orange eyes. Why, you really want to start a relationship now? What if Kaido finds out about it? Yamato asked as Izuku smirked at her. Kaido gave his blessing before we made the plan to escape from his clutches. Originally he was going to have you married off to me so that you could take over the beast pirates with me right next to you. And before you ask, he didn't tell me exactly, but I overheard him talking to King about what he thought was the best idea for your future, Izuku said as Yamato began to tear up. Why, you really want to enter a relationship with me, Izuku? You, the one person who had been more focused on defeating Kaido? Yamato asked as Izuku looked up at her with his tear-filled eyes that reminded the young woman about emeralds. Why, yeah, I have been jumping around the feelings I've felt for you ever since I first met you. It just took way too long for me to act on them. I had always wanted to make sure that I could gain the power to defeat Kaido in order to ask for you to become mine. No, that's wrong. I wanted to marry you myself, but I couldn't put it into words when we hadn't defeated Kaido. So Yamato, do you think you can become both mine and my wife? Izuku asked as he pulled out a crimson ring. It had a jade gem on top of it, as well as something inscribed on the inside of the ring. It was her name as well as his, with an X in the middle. Yamato began to tear up even more as she picked him up and pushed his face into her ample bosom as she jumped around the place, screaming out to the world. Yes, yes, I will marry you, Izuku Midoriya, Yamato yelled out with a happy smile on her face, before pulling his face out of her chest. Holding both sides of his face softly, she looked into his eyes filled with slight lust and love before pulling him in just as the sun set, creating a shadow over their faces as they connected at the lips. As their lips connected, Izuku felt like fireworks were going off in his head as he closed his eyes as he placed his hands on Yamato's cheeks himself and pulled himself just a bit higher to where he could connect their foreheads. As they pulled apart, as they opened their eyes half-lidded, they stared into the other's eyes as hearts seemingly appeared in the middle of their irises, and then, as if nothing could worsen the mood, a weird sound happened. Thump, 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 clack. As soon as both heard that sound, they had the same thought at the same time, and they could only say one thing in their mind. What the foo dash? It was moments after their moment together that Izuku and Yamato looked into each other's eyes and heard a weird sound from the world. Thump, thump, clack. Looking at one another a literal second after hearing that sound, they looked around to see if someone was playing a prank on them before noticing that they were the only ones on the hill. Shaking their heads on that weird moment, they headed back to Marco in order to train a little bit more before their trip to Wano in 2 days. Arriving at the man's training ground, he looked at them with a mirth in his eyes as he smirked at Izuku smugly before pulling him into a one-armed hug. I'm proud of you, man. You finally asked the girl out and are courting her at the same time. I bet Pops would be incredibly proud of your choice, Marco laughed as Izuku weakly struggled in his grip. As the man released Izuku from his hold, he happily glared at them as he got into a fighting stance to initiate their training. As the trio had begun their training, their crew had come over to see what was happening between them all as they smiled at the diligence between them and their goal to get stronger. Izuku attacked Marco with a flurry of Haki-empowered strikes that were fast and swift, as Yamato increased her armament Haki to the point of which she powered up her weapon strikes. As Izuku moved forwards with his attacks on Marco, he pulled out his saber that he managed to collect from a store that called out to him nearby. It was a long saber that had an intricate design that had the look of the earth that he always knew and loved. On the handle as it was surrounded by a large dragon. It represented his problems about this world as well as his own, as well as his goal to surpass them both in order to head home. He went on the attack, placing armament haki into his weapon of choice as he went to attack Marco with it, unconsciously using the Gura no Mi to increase the power of the strike. When it hit home, cracks appeared in the world, but they were smaller than before when they were training together, as it just sent Marco flying into the distance. Smiling at how their training had finally come to an end with the defeat of Marco, they ran over to make sure the Phoenix was all right, only to find him laughing out loud in a crater. Didn't think that I'd lose my guard that quickly, the man said, before getting up with some trouble. Your power is as strong as Pops was in his prime now. You're ready to take on Kaido, Izuku, Marco said, as he seriously and sadly smiled at the boy. I'm glad that I can take on Kaido now, but I won't be alone in the fight against that man. I will have Yamato and probably Luffy to help, Izuku said, as Marco smiled even more. Let's head out. Men, the Straw Hats are probably wrecking the place as we speak, Marco called out, as everyone moved onto his ship and left the harbor of Sphinx Island and left towards Wano. It had been about a day and a half since they set out towards Wano, and they had arrived at the outer rim of the place as they moved inland. They found a lot of dark clouds over Onigashima as Izuku and Yamato gained nervous looks at the power being thrown about the area. All right, we are going to be launching an attack with the Straw Hats against the Beast Pirates men. What we need to do is make sure that both Izuku and Yamato keep their power as well as their haki levels at the correct spot in order to make sure that Kaido can be defeated with Luffy. Let's cause some chaos that only the Whitebeard pirates can do. Let's make Pops proud, Marco called out as he took flight towards Onigashima. As the ship made landfall on the port of the Beast Pirates, the place was already being tossed around by the Straw Hats as they fought the Flying Six as well as the All-Stars. Izuku and Yamato made their way to where the leaders of the three crews within the attackers were, located at the top of Onigashima. As soon as they found the trail to get there, they found two men fighting Big Mom as she was struggling against their collective power. Thinking back on it, Izuku looked at Yamato as he smiled at her before she nodded, and they moved to take on Kaido. If there was anyone who could take on Big Mom at this point and not be killed already because of her powers, then those two would be fine. They made their way to the top of Onigashima's skull where there was another fight taking place, but it looked to be as one-sided as possible as they found Luffy being tossed around like a ragdoll, jumping in the way of the young man to prevent him from falling off Onigashima. Yamato placed the young man on the ground as he looked at her. Wow, you have really big racks, he said, as Yamato looked pointedly at him. I'm in a relationship, she said as the young man laughed. Don't worry, I won't get in the way. I just wish to become king of the pirates, and Kaido is in the way, Luffy said, laughing it off. Well, let's not keep him waiting then, why don't we? A new voice called out as Luffy saw Izuku land in front of him. Why, you're Luffy said in awe. So the new son of Newgate had arrived. I'm surprised that you had managed to escape me the first time, Midoriya, Izuku, but you will be put down in order to make sure that everything that I've built isn't destroyed, Kaido said, as he glared at the boy. I've come back for one thing, Kaido. I've come back in order to take you down and make sure you stay that way, Izuku said, as he tossed off his jacket. As it floated away in the wind, Luffy and Yamato noticed how there was a tattoo on his back. It wasn't Whitebeard's pirate crew tattoo. It was a tattoo of his own, a planet that was surrounded by a dragon, with cracks all over the planet was what the tattoo was. Izuku looked at Kaido in the face as he glared at him before speaking to the man as if he was a mere footnote in history. In the name of the newfound earthquake, Draconic pirates, I will defeat you, Izuku called out, as he smiled before launching towards the man. Yamato looked at Izuku in awe as the boy had finally stated what their pirate crew would be called, and it was surprisingly what she had called them in the past. But leaving that moment in the past was needed as she joined next to Izuku as she pulled off her sleeves, showing the two pirate crews she belonged to. the Whitebeards as well as Izuku's as she looked at him as they ran, and activated their haki and launched an attack on the man's head. Izuku landed a haki-infused punch on the man's upper temple, as Yamato did the same on the chin. As Kaido was sent twirling in the air, Luffy had appeared in Gear 4 of his Devil Fruit powers and landed a haki-infused punch on the man's nose, sending him to the ground. As he got back up from the ground, he transformed into his hybrid form of a draconic Oni and attacked the group with his haki-infused attacks. All three fighters launched at the leader of the Beast Pirates as they used their weapons at the same time in an attack against the man. Kaido had infused haki into his kanabo and swung it towards the three, believing it to be the thing to stop the two from attacking him as well as send Luffy flying. But what he saw next surprised him even more, as Izuku activated his Conqueror's haki with his attack. And just before any of their attacks clashed, there was a small pocket of air between the attacks as a shockwave blasted from all areas of the world. As soon as Luffy went for his attack, he had punched the Beast Pirate captain in the face as it forced him to pull his weapon away from Izuku, allowing the boy to send his saber into the man's lower abdomen, creating a massive slice mark into his body. As the man fell backwards, Izuku jumped up at the opportunity as he moved towards the sky as he pulled a fist back as it started to glow softly before a circle of energy formed, causing Kaido to recognize the power. Gura Gura no Mi, that means Whitebeard is dead. He mumbled to himself before being hit with a powerful punch to the face, creating cracks in the world. As the cracks caused massive pain in Kaido's head, the damage from the attack moving onto the rest of Onigashima was extremely tremendous as the skull they were on top of started to fall apart. Luffy and Yamato yelled at Izuku as the boy was in the air above Kaido as the man swung his kanabo at the boy in order to try and hit Izuku. But the boy used his Devil Fruit powers to push back the kanabo. As soon as cracks appeared in the world from Izuku punching to his left, the kanabo of Kaido broke apart from the power of the boy's control of the Gura Gura no Mi as it fell apart as Kaido was left to fall to the ground. As soon as he landed, Izuku moved platforms over to where Yamato and Luffy were located as they heard the sounds of a dragon yelling at the world. And as soon as they looked to the sky, they found Kaido in his full draconic transformation as he glared at the trio. It's been a long time since I've used this form. You will all die for pushing me this far, he growled before he opened his mouth for an attack. As soon as the breath attack formed in his mouth, Izuku made his move as he tossed his saber in the air, catching everyone's attention. That was when he placed his arms in the air as he grabbed the world and pulled down slightly. Even Kaido had stopped his attack from charging even more as he watched what the kid did. He knew that only Edward Newgate could do that attack, and now this boy was using the same move. Izuku then heard his saber hit the ground as he pulled all the way down as everything around the area was pushed and pulled up into the air as they looked at the man. Kaido was now trembling in the air as he struggled to stay afloat in the air to look at them, and as soon as he released his attack on them, Luffy went to attack him and was engulfed in a massive explosion, knocking him out of his Gear 4 transformation. As he fell from the air and into the water down below, Kaido bellowed out that Luffy was dead and that there was nothing he could do to win now. Izuku moved to attack Kaido now that he was distracted, and as he placed haki into his attack, he used his power of the Gura Gura no Mi in order to increase the damage capabilities. Fortunately for the Straw Hat Pirates, Law's men had caught Luffy as he landed in the water and were doing some first aid on the man as they tried to make sure the young lad would survive the damage. Izuku and Yamato teamed up against Kaido as they pushed the leader of the Beast Pirates to the upper limits of his power before he transformed into his hybrid transformation just to limit the damage to Wano. Izuku took this as his true chance to defeat the villain of this place as he activated his Gura Gura powers and infused his saber with both armament haki and Conqueror's haki in order to deal the most damage to the man. Yamato joined Izuku in his endeavor to defeat Kaido, and soon after they reached the man, he went for a punch that Yamato blocked with her kanabo and allowed Izuku to move in and slice the man's upper chest. But what Kaido did was unsettling as he attempted to push the blade away. He made a terrible error in his movement as the saber was plunged into his chest, right where his heart was. Then there was the added effect of cracks in the world inside the man's body just as he was about to pull out the blade. His entire being was destroyed from the inside out. And a massive explosion of red and blue happened in the air as Yamato was sent to the ground below just at the edge of the sandy beach of Onigashima, and Izuku was sent through multiple floors of the building he was located over as he was just underneath Kaido. The force of the attack had caused everyone to look up in the air, and as they saw Kaido explode in a massive display of power, Marco noticed how Izuku fell through multiple floors of the building and managed to catch him before he hit the ground hard. Izuku had a massive amount of blood over his entire body as Marco decided to look to the sky once more, and he truly wished he didn't, because as soon as everyone looked up, they found pieces of the once indestructible Kaido fall onto the ground before they found his head land on the ground with a look of pure shock and horror on his face. The battle against the beast pirates had come to an end. Kaido was now dead, the one thing he had wanted in the entirety of his life. Izuku sat next to Marco on his ship as Yamato was trying to get Izuku to speak to them, but the boy had gone catatonic from his brutal killing of Kaido. Yamato sat beside him the entire time as she helped him out in getting his emotions together. They had one goal now, and that was to find the one piece, the one treasure that could bring both him and Yamato back to his world by chance. He really hoped that this treasure could bring Izuku and Yamato away from their world. Marco couldn't tell them what their new bounties were, especially since they were now Yonkos of their own. Looking down at the papers on the bounty sheets, it showed Izuku and Yamato together as it was the seemingly start of a new pirate crew, the same one that Izuku yelled to Kaido the previous day before the man had inadvertently killed himself with Izuku's strength. Earthquake Dragon Pirates Izuku Midoriya 4 billion berries. Earthquake Dragon Pirates Yamato 3,950,000,000 berries. I can only hope that neither one of these two are separated from one another. They need the other's support in these trying times, Marco said to himself primarily, but his crew heard them as they were making their way to the last known location of Shanks. They had to ask him a particular question to the man. If they could have his assistance in finding the One Piece, they had a goal for Izuku and Yamato to get back to Izuku's home world and save it from any and all harm. It wasn't much longer before Izuku has gotten out of his catatonic state. When he left the mess hall in order to get some sleep, Yamato followed after him in order to try and get him back to his original self before he killed her father brutally. This would become an uphill battle from here to make sure that Izuku was alright mentally. After his fight with Kaido, whilst the Straw Hats were celebrating on Wano, Izuku and Yamato were leaving in search of the One Piece. It had been a few days since the defeat of the Beast Pirates, and Izuku was lying in bed as he felt Yamato hugging him close to her. He let himself fall into the valley of her chest as he thought to himself about the things leading up to the death of Yamato's father. He was about to release a powerful strike, combined with his devil fruit, onto the strongest creature's chest, but he never thought that the Oni monster would move his blade to where it would pierce through his chest. But from what it looked like, Kaido had been attempting to send it a different direction than into his own chest. As Izuku made this revelation, he still blamed himself for murdering Yamato's father, and he didn't know why she still wished to stay by his side right now. As the morning continued on, Izuku was pulled further into Yamato's body as he felt like his own was trying to react to the amount of attention his was getting. Shaking his head from the intrusive thoughts of Yamato, he pulled himself from her arms as he got to leave the room. He made his way over to where the mess hall was located on Marco's ship as he entered the room, to the confusion as well as happiness of Marco. "Hey little man, it's been a few hours since you last talked. How has it been?" Marco asked as Izuku sighed. "I want to return back to my home, but at the same time, I would rather die than go back there alone. My life as a quirkless individual wasn't the best kind of life," Izuku said as Marco nodded. I can see that. But at the same time, how would your family take to you already entering a courtship with Yamato? Marco asked as he smirked at Izuku. My mom is the only person in my life who cares about me. Yamato would be the first person I'd brought back home since I was 4. She would be ecstatic about how I already have a girlfriend at this point in my life. Izuku said as Marco smiled. Be happy you have some loving mother. Some of us were passed down to the street to live our lives without regret, Marco said as Izuku nodded. So where is our next destination, Captain? Marco asked as Izuku looked at him. What are you talking about? Aren't you the captain of this ship? Izuku asked as Marco told him to look outside. What are you? Izuku began to ask before looking at the ship's Jolly Roger. He was completely amazed that it was changed from Marco's phoenix-colored skull to Izuku's tattoo on his back. How did you all find the time or this? Izuku asked as Marco looked at him. We had all day yesterday in order to complete this in time for you to come back to us. Don't worry about it. You're the closest thing to Pops as of right now. So just keep yourself going by telling us where to go, Marco said, smiling. Well, I guess we could go find Shanks, Izuku said as Marco looked at him pointedly. You already wish to fight another Yonko after you defeated one of the most powerful ones? He asked incredulously. What? No, I need the one person who knows where it is in order to get back to my world with Yamato, and Shanks is the one person who knows where it was last seen, Izuku said as Marco nodded. I see that, but what makes you think that he will allow you to follow him to Laugh Tale in order to attain the One Piece? Marco asked as Izuku looked at him with determination. I will tell him about my situation as well as what is going on with my world. I will also inform him about why I need to go, Izuku said as he looked out the window. Whitebeard? Marco asked as Izuku nodded. If he hears that it was Whitebeard's last words to me before he left us, then he will know that it is important, Izuku said as they went to the bridge. All right, everyone. We are making a mission for ourselves. We are to go find the One Piece, but not only that. We are going to recruit the assistance of Red Hair Shanks to our cause, Marco called out as the whole crew yelled in happiness. All right, Captain, where to? Marco asked as Izuku looked over where Shanks' territory usually is located on the map. We head over to his last known location, Gray Terminal, Izuku said as Marco told his crew to turn the ship towards Gray Terminal. The next location is to find Red Hair Shanks. It has been a week since Izuku had the crew set sail in order to find Shanks. From what they heard on the news was that Shanks had taken down Kid, one of the newer Yonkos, who had taken down Big Mom with Trafalgar D. Law, and that young man was defeated by Blackbeard and his pirate crew. Izuku was beginning to believe that with all of these people vying for the Yonko status that he and Yamato technically had, he even saw that Luffy and his crew were dealing with one of the world government leaders on Egghead Island. Shaking his head from the problems that were happening, he continued on towards Gray Terminal in order to find any clues as to the last known whereabouts of Red Hair Shanks. He knew that the man had been one of the more powerful figures in the world, but he didn't know that he was just as elusive as some of the more shady individuals of the world as well. As they traversed the entire seas in search of the one man who could assist them in finding the One Piece and bring them back to the world where Izuku lived, they were being chased by another pirate ship. Looking at its Jolly Roger, it was the Blackbeard pirates. It seemed like Marshal D. Teach had finally decided to come after him and Yamato for himself. Izuku found that the ship they were using was coming under fire from the Blackbeard pirates, cannons that were constantly bombarding them. Izuku decided to keep himself as far away from the pirates as possible, since he knew that it was only a matter of time before they would catch up to them. As soon as they were upon the island of Gray Terminal, he made landfall and had his newfound crew run into the forest. As soon as everyone was split apart from one another, with the exception of Yamato, as she was still asleep on the ship, Blackbeard and his crew had searched the place and never found her, surprisingly, especially since her room was combined with Izuku's, within one of the ship's walls behind a safe door. As they all split apart from the main crew, Blackbeard followed the trail that Izuku left behind just for the man himself to follow, as the pirate had followed the trail in order to find Izuku and steal his devil fruit power. He smiled to himself as he continued to think about everything that had happened before he defeated Pops. How the man himself was so strong that it literally took his entire crew just to put the man down in order to end the much older man. So fighting someone who had managed to both defeat and kill Kaido would be a very dangerous plan of gaining the Gura no Mi. It wasn't much longer before Blackbeard had entered a clearing when he found that there was nobody in the area. Using observation hockey to search the area, he found only the local fauna. As he started to get angrier about losing the person who had the power of Pops as well as the one power that could assist him in taking down the government far away from the area, Izuku was seen with his crew blowing up Blackbeard's ship and taking off towards the sea. As soon as the Blackbeard pirates noticed that their ship was destroyed, they were screaming their curses at them as they floated away from the island. Izuku had used his speed in order to get around the island, as Blackbeard had been in the forest in order to see if there was any known locations that Shanks had been in search of. He was told by some of the people that the man came to random islands in order to get some drinks as well as party with some of the populace. But as of late, the man had been in search of something, and that he wasn't going to be stopped from doing so. Shanks was seen on Thriller Bark Island as he looked at some of the devastation created by Luffy in order to defeat one of the fishmen that had taken control of the area. He watched as the people were still fixing the damage of the main building from when the fishmen were in control over their main billing company. He then heard from some of the populace that there was someone in search of him, and that he had been the one to finally put down Kaido and prevent him from coming back again. His eyes widening from the sounds of it, he moved over to the person who was talking about the person who took down Kaido. "Who is this person that you are talking about?" Shanks asked, as he looked at them seriously. It was two of his pirates who were talking about it before. They showed him the bounty poster of a young man and woman in the same image, with two very different bounties. Midoriya, Izuku, bounty of 4 billion berries. Yamato, bounty of 3.95 billion berries. Shanks mumbled to himself as he noticed the face. Wasn't his bounty only around 3 billion berries around the time of Marineford? Shanks asked, as his men looked at one another before telling him he was the one at Marineford with Whitebeard and his crew. Apparently, he got his bounty raised because he ate the Gura no Mi. His right hand said, as Shanks smiled to himself. So he thinks that since he defeated Kaido, that I will be the next to fall. I will show him that his ego will not allow him to win, Shanks said, before his men spoke up to him. That isn't what the rumors are talking about, Captain, one of his crew said, as he looked at them confused. What does he want then? Shanks asked. We don't know, just that he wishes to have your presence so he can ask something of you. His crew retorted to his crew as they looked at the concerned look on their captain's face. Whatever, if he wishes to have an audience with me, so be it. If he thinks that he will be taken to the One Piece to become Pirate King, I will not allow it, Shanks said, as he glared hatefully at the bounty of the 16-year-old boy.